Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of Sean's Movie Crusades. My name is Sean Wassergroup and I'm here to review the latest movies in theaters and streaming, as well as any movies you guys recommend, whether they be recent films or old school movies. Today we are going to be reviewing the latest horror film from Netflix called Bird Box. Before we get into the review, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and if you guys like the review enough, go ahead and share it. And go ahead and head on over to Facebook on Sean's Movie Crusades and go ahead and follow it there, so that way you stay up to date with all the latest reviews and anything else that we drop on the channel. Now, today's review, like I said, is all about the movie Bird Box. This movie kind of just snuck up on us. Mostly like how Netflix movies do. They usually drop a trailer about either anywhere between like 2 weeks to a month before the movie drops. Never heard of this film up until the trailer dropped, so it was definitely something that just kind of came out of nowhere, but the trailer was so intriguing with a drop of insanity that I just had to see it. And I was shocked at the star cast for this movie that this was actually on Netflix. And this further shows how big Netflix is actually getting, that they're getting these top tier actors and actresses to be in their movies now. I mean, it all basically, to me, it all kind of started last year when Will Smith did Bright. And then, of course, Christmas Chronicles with Kurt Russell, and now we've got this one with Sandra Bullock. And this movie could have easily came out in theaters. I think it would have actually did very well in theaters, just like Bright and Christmas Chronicles. Even though Bright wasn't good, I still think it would have been a good theater film. And Christmas Chronicles definitely, I think, would have been a great theater film. I just think it would have been a good Christmas movie in general for public to see. Bird Box definitely is a different kind of movie overall. Basically, here's the plot that we know from the trailer. Is basically you have Sandra Bullock. She plays Mallory, and she's pregnant, and she's an artist, and she's kind of closed off from the world. I mean, she doesn't really like going outside. She just kind of likes staying in her studio apartment and paint. And then she has her sister, played by Sarah Paulson, whose name's Jessica. And basically, she comes over to visit, and she's kind of goes and gets Mallory groceries, and she's kind of the contact to the outside world for the Mallory character. And basically, they leave the apartment because Mallory has to have a checkup with her OB. And before they go out there, there's this news alert basically happening overseas, I think in Russia and Europe, where there's this mass suicide thing happening, where people are just insanely committing suicide for no reason. And they can't figure out what the reason is. It's just people keep killing themselves. So that's what's going on overseas. And then in the process of Mallory and Jessica being at the OB, Mallory's walking through the hospital, and all of a sudden she sees a woman just starts bashing her head into the glass window. And basically, whatever has been overseas has now hit the U.S. And so they're in the process of trying to get back home as fast as possible, and just mass chaos is happening. And basically what this thing is there's this presence or entity that if you see it, your eyes just transform and kind of turn into like a brown, and you kind of almost have like a brown out with your eyes, and it immediately sets that person into the automatic urge that I need to kill myself right now. From the movie, what they see is sometimes their greatest fears, or it's lost, loved ones, or something like that. It's never really clear, but basically, it's outside. So the whole presence of the film is that they need to stay indoors and not look out the windows. You can't, basically, you can't have any visual look outside, because if you do, the entity can see you, and then if you see the entity, then you will kill yourself. So basically, everyone has to get inside, and if they do have to venture outside, they basically have to wear blindfolds. And as long as they're wearing blindfolds, they can actually move around quite normal outside. And that's kind of the premise. And then basically, the the way the film goes is that the movie starts out 5 years after the situation has started, and Sandra Bullock has these two young children with her, and they're going to go on a journey. And basically what's going to happen is they have to get into a boat, and they have to sail down river blindfolded, basically. And it's supposed to be like a 48-hour trip. So basically, Sandra Bullock with two children has to go down this river for 48 hours, not being able to see anything that's happening around them. And then throughout this situation, we revert back to the 5 years prior, from the day the incident started to the people Sandra Bullock has met, and how she has gotten to this point in the film where she's now having to go downriver with two children. And that's basically the general plot of the film. The problem with this movie, and this is not a knock on the movie per se, but this is the reason why I think it didn't go to theaters, even though this was made before this other film, is that this is basically, in a sense, what we call a twin movie. And what that basically means is that usually once, sometimes multiple times a year, there are two movies that come out that are quite similar. Probably the biggest ones that I can think of off the top of the head is 1998. You had Deep Impact and Armageddon, which are basically two identical movies about an asteroid coming to Earth. They do their own thing with the movies, but it's the exact same premise. And for the most part, usually between the two twin movies, one is widely successful, and one is considered basically the ugly twin that people rarely talk about. The other ones being I'm blanking on them right now. There's a lot. Like, I actually looked it up. I'm actually gonna do a separate video about twin movies. But basically, the twin movie... Oh, yeah. Olympus Has Fallen and White House Down. That was another one where basically two separate movies where terrorists come at the White House. And they both came out at basically within months of each other. There's plenty of movies like these. But this year, Bird Box is really, really, really remotely close to one of the best films of the year, A Quiet Place. The only difference really being is that in A Quiet Place, it's all about sound and it's aliens, and Bird Box is all about sight and an entity or a demon or what. I mean, like I said, we don't ever really know. So they're very similar in a sense, where it's all about you losing one of your primary senses and you having to basically adapt to the change or die. And so it has a lot of similarities to A Quiet Place to a point, but it is still a drastically different movie. But because A Quiet Place had done so amazingly well, Bird Box is constantly going to be looked at as the ugly twin to A Quiet Place. It does not mean Bird Box is a bad film by any means. It's just that it's lesser than A Quiet Place because of how well received Quiet Place was. One great thing about this film overall is the performances of everybody in the movie are great. Sandra Bullock does a fantastic job as Mallory. She really plays that kind of closed off loner character very well, but then she's forced into having to be in situations with people that she does not like, and then she also has to kind of learn to create relationships with these people because, to their knowledge, they're the last remaining people on Earth, and her kind of having to deal with the people that she can't be around, and then kind of developing relationships with other people in the house that could potentially grow into positive relationships, and watching Sandra Bullock's character grow and regress throughout the film from where she started before the outbreak to the end of the film, where we actually get to see what happens with her character. Other standout performances, you have Trevante Rhodes, who has really been killing it as of late. I mean, he's the guy who played the older version of the main character in Moonlight. He also was really good in the subpar movie The Predator earlier this year. He was also in 12 Strong. I didn't see that film, but I heard he was solid in it. And he gives another great performance in this as Tom. And he's kind of the one person in the house that Sandra Bullock can kind of rely on and turn to and develop a friendship with. And he's kind of that tough muscle guy, but really is more instead of trying to be like an asshole tough guy, he's that protector, and he's the one guy that they can 100% rely on, the group, to be the guy that's going to make sure everyone stays safe. And he does a great job of playing this role. And this guy's really coming into his own as an actor. And anytime he's on a casting list for any of these films, I'm always kind of excited because I know he's actually going to bring a lot to the role that he's in. Another standout would be John Malkovich. I mean, everyone knows John Malkovich. Love him or hate him, he's a phenomenal actor. And he's great in this as Douglas. He's basically plays the asshole character of the group, which Malkovich plays always to perfection. And he's just that one guy who just keeps everything way too real. And when there are certain moments when people need some levity or some hope, he's that guy that just is like, you guys are stupid, we're all gonna die, so we might as well just accept it. And he just kind of ruins the mood, and he does it very, very well. The two kid actors that she's with, going downriver, they do a pretty good job. That is Vivian Lyra Blair. She plays I'm not gonna say her name because that's kind of a spoiler for the movie. And then Julian Edwards, who I'm also not going to say his name because that spoils it for the movie as well. They both, for the parts that they have, for the roles they have, they do a pretty decent job. They're not really asked to do a whole lot except for kind of just look scared, but they're good in the parts that they have. So I mean, I can't really say much more than that because there's not really a whole lot to their characters, but they're good in the scenes that they are. They're not annoying children. They do the scenes pretty well overall. Any other standouts? Sarah Paulson is really good as Jessica in the scenes that she's in as Mallory's sister. You also have Jackie Weaver as Cheryl. She does decent in her small roles as well. Machine Gun Kelly is in this movie, and if there was a bad performance, it would be Machine Gun Kelly. Machine Gun Kelly basically is playing Machine Gun Kelly. He's an unlikable character. They don't give him enough to even do anything to make his character likable. He's just kind of there. He's just one of those guys in the house that you just don't trust, nor do you want to be left in a room with, which I can kind of see. He's basically playing himself. You also got B.D. Wong. He's got a small role in the movie as well. He does pretty good with the scenes that he's in. Tom Hollander, he's in it as well as a mystery character that I'm not going to talk about, but he's good in the role that he has. Little Rel Howery, who from Get Out, he's really good in this. This is, I think, the third movie I've seen him in. First one being Get Out, the second one being Uncle Drew. He's always solid in all the movies. He brings that comedic value, and with this, he does have some comedic lines, but he plays it very well the whole way through. And I think that he's a standout in the scenes that he's in. You also have Danielle McDowell. She plays Olympia. She's okay. I mean, she doesn't really do anything super great in her role. She's just kind of there. But for the part that she plays, she does a decent job. And then last but not least, you have Rosa Salazar. She plays Lucy. She's another character that I feel like they could have done a whole lot more with, but they just didn't give her enough character arc or just opportunities to do anything in the movie. This movie is really based around, for the most part, three main characters, and that is Mallory's Sandra Bullock character, Javante Rhodes' Tom character, and John Malkovich's Douglas character. Everyone else has small parts and are good in those small parts, but they don't get enough to flesh out the characters as a whole. It's really all about, for the most part, Douglas, Tom, Mallory, and then obviously the two kids when they go to the present day. What works in the movie, besides the performances, the movie is crazy intense, just like A Quiet Place, and I hate that I have to keep resorting back to A Quiet Place because I'm trying to keep this movie separate from them, but let's face it, it's a twin movie. It's intense all the way throughout. Does it ever reach the intensity of what A Quiet Place was? No, because obviously sight is, I would say that in A Quiet Place it's a lot harder to make it through life without making a sound. And staying alive than it is to not being able to see. Because obviously, if you're blindfolded, you can still function for the most part, but with sound, you have to be you have to change your whole lifestyle for the most part, because if you make any noises, whether it's, putting down a plate, burping, or even farting, I mean, you could be dead. In this, you just gotta not look outside and keep your eyes closed and wear a blindfold, and you can pretty much do pretty well, to the most part. There are other things that happen in the film that might make that a little bit harder, but for the general part of the movie, with you not knowing spoilers, that's all you really have to do to survive. There's one particular scene where the group in the house are running low on food, and they need to get to a grocery store, and they have to basically black out the windows and drive blindly to the grocery store, and they're basically using the proximity sensors of the car and the GPS to get there, and that's a super intense scene. It's incredibly well done, and it's a highlight of the film in general. And like I said, the intensity throughout the entire film, you're on the edge of your seat throughout the whole thing, and it's a fun, even though it's very stressful, it's a fun, stressful watch the whole way through. What doesn't work for the movie overall is there are certain characters that we get introduced to that just disappear, and we don't see outcomes to their characters. I mean, you just chalk it up to they probably died, but we don't see their deaths. So, like, there's two characters in particular that there's more than two. There's like 4 characters that leave the house that the group is with, and we don't ever see what happens to those characters. So that really annoyed me, because we had been, following some of these characters for 20 plus minutes, and they decide to leave, and we never see them again. We don't ever find out what really happened to them. We assume they're dead, but I would much rather had seen their outcomes, because why, build stories with these characters and then not let us see their endpoints. Some of the decision making in the movie is also quite stupid for the people. There's just certain situations that certain characters put themselves in that you're like, no sane person would ever think of doing that or risk their lives for doing that. Another huge situation is that once they attempt the grocery store scene, one character basically says we should just stay here and never go back to the house because we have all the food we need and all this stuff. And that was really a smart play. The general reason why they went back to the house is that they felt, because not the whole crew went, and they were like, that'd be a dick thing to do. What about those people? Well, if that's the case, go get the other people, bring them back to the grocery store, and you guys will be fine. But there's other decision makings that are really quite stupid that I can't go further on because of spoilers. But some of the decision making in the film is just quite dumb. The other thing too is that they never show the entity or the presence in the film. There is one part where you see someone who there's like drawings of it, but we never physically get to see the actual entity or presence of the film. The closest we get to it is wind blowing and shadow. And that's quite it. And I really wish that we would have gotten to actually see the entity itself. And if not the entity itself, then at least through the eyes of one of the people that has seen it, see what they're seeing. I mean, there are certain situations where there's one character that apparently sees her dead mother, and she immediately kills herself because she's trying to be with the dead mother. And then there's another one that's clearly terrified because they see something that just utterly terrifies them. But they never say what it is. We never see what it is. So it's just one of those things where we just have to kind of have our own imagination. But I mean, it could have been anything. The person could have been scared of bunnies, and they just saw a giant bunny. We have no idea. So not seeing the entity or the presence that causes the people to do the mass suicides, or even seeing what the people themselves see, was kind of a letdown. And while yes, sometimes in certain films, like The Exorcism of Emily Rose, for one, where not seeing what the thing is that terrifies the people was a strong thought process of the film, I felt like it was kind of something that was not strong in this. I felt it actually hurt the movie, not being able to see the presence or what the people saw. And it was something I really wish they would have done differently. There's another situation of the film that comes about halfway through that you find out that certain people aren't affected by the presence or the entity over others. I'm not going to go any further into it than that because spoilers, but at a certain point of the film, there are certain people that can go outside or that can and be not blindfolded and can function properly. And to not have a real explanation to why also leaves it a lot of unanswered questions. I mean, this was a book, so there was tons of room for explanation that we just don't get. This movie does clock in at right around 2 hours, 2 hours and 5 minutes, so I get that it's a long movie in itself, but there's just a lot of unanswered questions that I'm sure that was answered in the book, and if they weren't answered in the book, then okay, but I didn't read the book, but if they're in the book, I feel like that was something that should desperately have been in the movie overall. Overall thought process, I actually really enjoyed the movie. For a Netflix film, it's honestly one of the best Netflix movies I've seen. If it were going by movie theater experience, it was a solid thriller slash, I mean, I wouldn't really call it a horror. It's definitely more of a thriller film. But it's solid. I mean, like I said, it's no Quiet Place. It's definitely the uglier twin to the other twin film. But like I said, the performances are good. It's very stressful, but in a fun way. It's super intense. And it's pretty decent. There's just certain things, like I just mentioned, that just didn't work for me. But it didn't make the movie a bad movie for me. It's definitely something that I would recommend to people. I think it's a good movie to check out, especially when you're at home. It's definitely not something to ignore or never watch. I definitely highly recommend the film. It's just not one of the best movies of the year, clearly, but I still think it's a solid film that people would enjoy. So yeah, next time you guys are looking for something on Netflix, and you see Bird Box pop up, go ahead and hit that play button. I'm sure you guys will enjoy it. If not, definitely the performances I think you'll enjoy. And I also would like to throw a shout out to, because even though I was going to watch this anyway, it did technically get recommended to me. So I'm going to go ahead and give a shout out to Chandler for saying that I should really check this movie out, even though I was going to already. But yeah, thanks Chandler for basically pushing me to watch this sooner rather than later. Thanks for the recommendation, and I hope you watch this video and you get to read or listen to the review. And if you come by me, whether it be on Facebook or whether it be in person, let's talk about it. Do you agree with the review? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Let's have a discussion. Same thing with any of you people watching the video right now. Discuss it. Leave a comment on the video below, or head on over to Sean's Movie Crusades on Facebook and leave a comment there. If you guys saw Bird Box, did you like it? Did you not like it? Were there certain things that bothered you? Or do you have some explanations of the film because you read the book that you could give me? I would love to hear it. So like I said, don't forget to leave some comments, and we'll go from there. And don't forget to hit that like button, and go ahead and share this to anyone if you think this review was worth sharing. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, as we are going to be doing some more reviews. Actually, I'm about to do the review for Aquaman. So get ready to be on the lookout for that. And then we have some other things coming, such as top films of the year, most surprising films of the year, most disappointing films of the year, and then at the beginning of the year, the most anticipated movies of 2009. So if you stay subscribed to the channel, you should be on the lookout for those. And until next time, until I see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.